You ever have that debate with a friend about a band that has two very huge singles that are closely resembling each other? Like, oh, that single's better. No, the other single is better. Well, there's a common thing with Linkin Park singles, especially the two we're going to talk about, and people pretty much argue which one is the best Linkin Park song of their entire discography. And the argument is two of their biggest singles coming off of their first two albums, Hybrid Theory and Meteora. Say what you want about those two albums, they are great albums, but if we're being honest here, they haven't really aged well. Like, you can definitely tell what time period they came from, but if it wasn't for these two songs here, who knows where Linkin Park would have been after the nu metal era for them kind of just ended. Would they have still been a popular band as they were? Would they have found more success after the nu metal days? Who knows? On our first ever episode of Single vs. Single, we take a look at their two biggest, In the End and Numb. There's always that argument. In the end, Numb. Which one is really the better Linkin Park track? Now, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, neither one of these tracks are really like my go-to number ones. I do have more preferred songs over these, but I do listen to all 6 of their albums in their entirety most of the time, and these two songs, when they pop up, are fine, but I don't necessarily see myself going back to them like I used to do. I grew up with pretty young parents in their early to mid-20s by the time I was born, so as I was growing up, these albums were constantly on repeat. Plus, I had uncles who were anywhere from 13 to 18 years old who were constantly bumping Hybrid Theory and Meteora, so I basically got to know those albums very, very well. And one of the tracks that we would play most is In the End. It got popular around the end of 2000 into 2001, as it wasn't one of the first singles that was released for Hybrid Theory, but it is the biggest single off of that album. Sitting at 1.1 billion views, which is their second most viewed music video on YouTube. You should probably know what the other one is already. It's still got a nu metal tinge to it, but it's more pop rock than you can ask for. Like, people complained about Linkin Park doing the pop shit on One More Light and the electronic shit on Living Things and A Thousand Suns and all this stuff, when they really don't realize that on their first two albums, the ones that everybody seemed to love and enjoy, they definitely did different things from just being the heavy, angsty nu metal that they were. And In the End is technically one of their softest, heaviest songs ever made. It has one of the more better and memorable piano lines that you will ever remember. I mean, that's like going up to an emo kid, hitting the G note, and then them just dying, because once you hit that note, you know that it's the Black Parade playing. Well, when you hear the piano chords for this song right at the beginning, you already know what song you're going to be hearing. And Mike Shinoda is more present on this track as he does rap during the verses, while Chester doesn't necessarily take a back seat, but he's really only heard on the chorus and on the bridge, but it still works very well together. And you do hear more instruments than usual. The guitar, drums, and all that are more present than how you would say on Numb, but we will get to that in a second. It has one of the most historic choruses ever. I tried so hard and got so far. And it still, to this day, 20 years later, gets continuous radio play. Radio still plays a lot of Linkin Park songs, like Somewhere I Belong, Until It's Gone, What I've Done, New Divide, Crawling, but this song probably is the one that they play the most, because when people go, I want to hear Linkin Park, they go, alright, In the End it is, and that's probably what most of the radio stations have, is just In the End. If they don't have any other Linkin Park songs, this is it. Now we fast forward 3 years later, Linkin Park releases their highly anticipated follow-up to Hybrid Theory, titled Meteora. and boy, did they avoid the sophomore slump. Now, people get mad at me because I say Hybrid Theory and Meteora are basically carbon copies of themselves. There's a lot of songs on Meteora that sound like sequels or B-sides to others on Hybrid Theory, but Meteora is my favorite of the two albums. I just kind of felt like if they were to go that direction again on their third album, it would start to get a little boring, and I think what really made Meteora the better album for me was the deep cuts hit a lot harder. Songs like Don't Stay and Hit the Floor were just a lot better. It just, I don't know, like I'll take those over Runaway and A Place for My Head, even though, again, those are two very good songs in itself. But the biggest song on this album is actually the album finisher, Numb. I mean, it's not often that album finishers get as much radio play as they do, because most of the time, at least artists nowadays, their thing is, we're going to put all the singles out in the order that they come out of the track listing. So if it's 5 singles, then it's most likely the first 5 tracks on an album, leaving the second half of the album single lists, or maybe there's one single just down there in between, but it's like, yeah, I'd rather it be mixed up, like have track 1 and then track 6 and then maybe track 11 as singles. That way you have it spread out, but putting the singles all together is really what makes those ending tracks that are mostly probably better than most of anything on the album. Then there's a problem there. But yeah, it is one of the better finishers to an album, and it is also in the 1 billion view mark. It sits at 1.4 billion views as of the recording of this video, which makes it their most watched music video on YouTube. So what do we have in store for Numb? Well, like In the End, it is pop rock. However, instead of being led by the piano tune, it is led by the opening synths that once you hear it, everybody will recognize the song right away. Mike Shinoda kind of takes more of a back seat on this, as he's only really heard in these parts. He takes more of a backseat with the piano work and other instrumentation that he would do later down the line in later works of Linkin Park. And there's also that debate that a lot of the great Linkin Park songs come from when both Chester and Mike share the microphone equally. I can attest to that. There are some songs where Mike is the highlight of the song, he's on it more, that are just really good, and then there are songs where Chester just takes over a song by himself that Mike isn't needed that much, if at all. So don't just say because it doesn't have Mike on it as much as it should, doesn't mean it's a bad song. Sometimes bands with 2 singers, one of the singers can take a back seat because maybe the other one just has a better strength, and let's be honest, I love both singers, but Chester has a better strength and range than Mike Shinoda probably ever will, but Shinoda can sing too. And like In the End, the historic chorus, people also just sing the chorus over and over in their heads. And after 17 years, this song also still gets radio play. If radios aren't gonna play In the End, then it's gonna be Numb. I'm just telling you that right now. Here's the debate now. Which single is actually better? Keep in mind, just a disclaimer, this part is the opinionative part of me. Just because I may say one song is better than the other doesn't make it a fact. But to me, one has more replay value than the other. I love Hybrid Theory and Meteora pretty equally as they are. They are my top 3 favorite Linkin Park albums, although I'm in the minority of most where 1,000 Suns is my favorite Linkin Park album, but, you know, hey, whatever. It's okay to be different sometimes. And I just feel with Meteora, there was a lot more memorable moments, and I believe it had the most top 10 hits for like a nu metal album, from Numb to Inside to Somewhere I Belong, Breaking the Habit. It just was on everyone's playlist back in the day. Hybrid Theory had its hits, but it did not hit as big as Meteora, as I think it ended up selling more copies than Hybrid Theory as well. And you gotta give it to Linkin Park for basically avoiding the dreaded sophomore slump. They somehow bettered themselves in album 2, when usually a band who has a great debut album usually falls a little bit or a lot come that second album, but it didn't feel like they were going to drop off at all. For as big as and historic as both of these songs are, my pick for which single is better has to be Numb.
What are you, fucking stupid?
I don't know why. I think it resonates with me more personally than In The End does. And I don't know. I think I wore out In The End's Welcome when back then my parents and I would just constantly play it and shove it down each other's throats to where it did definitely get annoying after a while. And it's not necessarily that I can't stand this song. I just don't necessarily want to listen to it like the others. And Numb's kind of the same way, but for some reason to me Numb is more tolerable and more personal, so I think that there's that bias there. But to me it is definitely the better single of the two, and this is one that is still, I think, people are going back to the most. People are still going back to In The End, but because Numb is more personal, people are going back, listening and going, I can relate to this too. And it's just a great memorial for what Chester had for us back then, and just shows you how much of an amazing singer he was. As fun fact, he recorded that music video with badly bruised ribs, hence why he's got his arm or his hand near his ribs kind of holding them, because, well, they're badly bruised and he's trying to let out these grouchy belts, so obviously it's going to hurt. And that just makes this song even 10 times better, knowing that the lead singer, in that much pain, was still able to put out a better performance than a sick Wes Scantlin covering Nirvana. Easy friend! That's it for this first episode of Single versus Single. I plan on doing an episode 2 of this. I'm going to take a look at Paramore's songs Misery Business and Decode, and basically just go through which one do I think is better, which one resonated better with me, and go through what kind of like what I did here. And the whole point of this is to not, separate fans from each other, like this one's great, this one's great. I don't want to start arguments like that. I mean, we can all agree that the songs we usually talk about are going to be some of the band's best work, but we all have our preferences over the others. So like I said, just know that because I tell you that one song might be better than the other, doesn't make it a fact. Doesn't mean it is the right decision. It's just my personal opinion, and some of these songs just may have more of a lasting impact for me than other songs. So that is it for me. You guys can tell me in the comments below, what are some bands who have 2 big singles that are really good that I should take a look at and do an episode of. And yeah, you guys can tell me also in the comments below, which one of these 2 songs would you prefer from Linkin Park? In the End or Numb? Which one do you think is the better hit? One rose them to heights, one rose them to even bigger heights, but which one do you think is just the standout from these 2 singles, the billion view videos on YouTube? And yeah, with that being said, stay safe out there, and I will catch you all in the next one.